Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Herd the Nerds, the Bacta podcast. I'm Keith, and on my right, I have Rob Fonda, or as I like to call him, the man who always seems to have the high ground.
Greetings.
And then on my left, Cameron Hill, the guy who just never wants to hear the odds. Welcome back.
What's up?
We got a great episode for you this week. Lots of stuff happened in Obi-Wan. First off, just want to say thank you to everyone for listening, watching, tuning in. Please do subscribe and like. There's a lot of fun stuff we have on our video version of the podcast. Like today, all I'm going to say is Mr. Potato Head and Darth Vader.
That's your tease.
And none of that has to do with what Rob's wearing.
No.
Not at all. I do love the getup today. It's going to be hard for me not to break, to be honest, this.
I saw an opportunity. I knew that at some point we were going to have a Vader episode.
Yeah.
And when I watched this episode of Obi-Wan this week, I was like, it's this week. It came earlier than I expected.
It did.
But it did come all the same.
Christmas came early.
Yes.
And I've got my speeder biker jacket on, and Cam's got something in store for us next week, and I'm very excited about it.
Yes, sir.
So big episode, lots of things to talk about. Rob's going to give us the 411. Tell us what went down. Let's just jump in the tank.
All right. Obviously, spoiler warning here. If you have not seen the episode,
yes,
turn back now. Okay, you have been warned. Okay, so getting into the episode, we're going to fly through this action to get you caught up to speed, to get you that reminder you need. We open up on Obi-Wan looking for guidance after the revelation of Anakin's survival from his old master Qui-Gon, but the only person on the other side of the line is Vader, who gets moving on his revenge very quickly. He has a chat in the castle Vader on Mustafar with the third sister, tells her that if she can help him corner Obi-Wan, she can be the new Grand Inquisitor, and if she fails, she's next on the choking block. Meanwhile, Leia basically switches from asking, "Are we there yet?" to how the Force works, and Obi-Wan describes it as a light in the darkness that helps you feel safe, all while he finishes fixing her droid, Lola. Next, they land on the planet Mapuzo, which has been ravaged by the Empire's mining facilities. As they walk to their rendezvous point for pickup, Obi-Wan tries to explain to Leia the evils of the Empire. Listen, your dad's trying to help, not everybody else is. But also, he's having visions of Anakin following them, and he sees Hayden Christensen, the Hayden Christensen version, because obviously he doesn't know what became of his old apprentice. At the Fortress Inquisitorius, Reva informs them that, hey, Obi-Wan killed the Grand Inquisitor, but they don't really care about that. She does say that, Vader put her in charge of finding Kenobi, much to their chagrin, and they launch probe droids to search for him. Finding no one is at the meetup spot. Obi-Wan suspects betrayal, but Leia manages to flag down a passing cargo speeder for a ride. And though Obi-Wan is nervous, seeing the Make the Great Galaxy Great Again Empire bumper sticker on the back of the transport, they do get on board. They soon pick up some wayward stormtroopers looking for a Jedi and give them a story about being farmers from Tal. Obi-Wan nearly fumbles the story by calling Leia by the wrong name, but recovers, saying that his daughter just reminds him so much of his late wife. After the troopers leave, Leia senses he's not told her everything and asks if he knows her real parents. He doesn't reveal their identity, but does tell her that he too was taken from his family at a young age, and reminisces about a family and a brother he hardly remembers. Soon they come to a checkpoint, and it turns out that their driver is a snitch. After one of the probe droids shows up and IDs him, Obi-Wan leaps into action, but just as they nearly escape, backup troopers arrive. But luckily for them, their contact, named Tala, is the Imperial officer with the reinforcements.
Pew pew.
And she shoots the troopers and takes Obi-Wan and Leia to a safe house in a nearby town. Tal explains she became disillusioned with the Empire and started smuggling Jedi and Force-sensitive children through the underground system called the Path, taking them to the planet called Jabim. Obi-Wan then notices the names and writings of several Jedi on the walls, including noted Jedi Quinlan Vos. Just before they leave to get to the ship, Obi-Wan feels a tremor in the Force and sees the Inquisitors on the streets, led there by the probe droid transmission. Even worse, they are followed by Vader, who, sensing Obi-Wan, starts murdering civilians to draw him out. Obi-Wan tells Tala to take Leia and run as he draws Vader away. Away from the town, the two frenemies meet up again, and while Obi-Wan has been cutting meat, Vader has been in the gym, and Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber, and it's his light in the dark, but he is just completely overwhelmed by Vader's hate and physical onslaught, and Vader promises to torture him and a slow death, and he traps his old master in flames, burning him like he had been on Mustafar. Sensing Obi-Wan is in trouble, Leia tells Tala to go help him as she runs to the ship. Back in their safe house, though, Reva has found their escape tunnel. Vader continues toying with Obi-Wan, burning him and tossing him around with the Force. He sends a trooper to go grab him, but Tala is just in time, shooting the trooper and using the flames to block them from Obi-Wan. She has her loyal and silent cargo droid Ned B recover him so that they can get to their ship to Jabim, but little do they know that Reva has beat them there, killing the pilot and capturing the unguarded Leia. And that's where we stand at the end.
Wow, well done, Rob. That was very impressive.
Keeping it tight.
There's a lot of really witty jokes in there that if you missed, you should go back and listen to, because I was dying over here. That was great.
Much appreciated.
First of all, I think that was Santa Clarita, not Griffith Park.
You know, this is like there was that planet on Mando 2 where they went to that Jedi shrine, and I had the same exact reaction. Just like, this looks like Southern California.
Yeah.
You know? Very much like they just went right outside the stages and just like, all right, we'll just shoot out here.
Yeah, I mean, you got to use what you're given, and I get it. It's nice to get outside, but it's like on some. I was just like, all of us that are in the business here are like,
we know
for
the locations.
sure.
Right.
We've seen the
San
location.
Fernando Valley.
I've gone hiking over there. Yeah.
And just throw a couple of stormtroopers and those flags in there, and it's like, all right,
It's a different planet. You didn't
see anything.
Jedi mind trick us all.
That planet to me was not a planet. I that was my one complaint. It's like, do something a little bit different that tells me, like, I like the whole idea of them saying, you know, this used to be a mining town and the Empire like ravaged it. But then it's just like some flags and some stormtroopers and Freck.
I did kind of wish there had been a bit more
Very desolate.
destruction.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
maybe it was an environmental destruction. It's just that it becomes a wasteland in that
Yeah.
sense.
I mean, you do see them pushing some farmers around,
Yeah.
or some civilians. You see the, you know.
And in the
them getting
distance, you
shot.
can kind of see some industrial buildings,
Yeah.
obviously factories for mining and whatever else they do. But yeah, see, they didn't really show us as much of the environment as they usually like to show when they go to new planets.
And
So-
we're going quick to a little bit harsh stuff here, but I will say, like, the streets. I'm getting tired of seeing Star Wars in the streets. That's all I gotta say. Like when Vader and the gang come walking down, I'm like, okay, we saw this in Boba Fett, we saw this in Mandalorian, and now we're seeing it in Obi-Wan. Do you remember any sort of street scenes in the original Star Wars movies other than when, like, in 4 they roll up and it's the
the
not
first
the droids,
season,
and then like
Mos
and then
Eisley
it's like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan leading
walking
them
through Mos
Naboo,
Eisley. Yeah.
and but that's like an intense chase scene. It's like these big wide, like, this is Star Wars because there's sand and there's these buildings and there's it just doesn't do it for me. I feel like we can do better than that. That other planet was much cooler.
It
definitely
does
was.
feel like a lot, and I think one thing to go off of that, it's more or less, I think it's an architectural thing, because a lot of those street scenes, they look like they use the same street for all the scenes. So maybe change up, I don't know, the architecture of what
Maybe
the buildings
some,
look like.
East Coast Cape Cod houses just thrown in there. I don't know. It's just like,
Yeah.
Well, because we know they can do it, because if you look in Mando Season 2 when they're on that one water planet, like that looks very cool.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
The docks and very like shipyard-esque.
that whole thing was CG.
Yeah,
other than
I'm sure.
Other than the grass and the water, it was all CG.
I'm sure.
It was the whole planet, the whole environment, all of it's CG. But I don't know. Money be money sometimes.
It do be. I mean, it doesn't bother me as much, I guess, necessarily, but I can see, now that looking back on it, like it does very much remind me of the village we see in Mando, the episode where they bring in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
they kind of have that, like,
The town at
the
the
town that's
city,
being run by the corrupt mayor. It does feel like it's the same set of buildings.
Right.
now that I look back on
I mean, sequels be what they may. I thought the different planets they did a really good job with. Where when Rey first finds the lightsaber in the basement below, and there's that kind of rebel base, and then when they basically go to Monaco, that planet was cool. It's just they're very colorful, lots of lively stuff. Whereas I feel like a lot of TV shows, a lot of sand.
Yeah, I will say
like the sand.
This is definitely like a planet that I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah,
like
we're good.
so many even.
Hope
like,
we get off here quick.
Yeah, even Dayu, like, which is a horrible place. I'd be like, I mean, I might spend a weekend there, just see what's up, see what we got going on here. But this place is just like, I think, like I said, I think I've hiked there before.
What's kind of interesting though is even the characters kind of felt that way too. They were like, "How do we explain how we're just out in this nowhere land?
it's
what story are we gonna come up with?"
You're on a holiday out here. Where are you going? And then and the other thing was, well, I think this is kind of a. We'll see. You guys want to get into it, like the lightsaber battle a little bit, because I mean, for me, every cool lightsaber battle has a cool backdrop. And the stone piles and the rock quarry weren't just not doing it for me. It was like these big banks of just gravel and like sand. Like I wanted some sort of cliffside or like I don't know, it's a big moment, right? It's the first time Obi-Wan and Vader are really going against each other, and it's like the last time they saw each other, there were volcanoes and lava and like all sorts of stuff, and it just felt a little flat.
I can see that. I think what worked for me in that scene is it did feel like such suffocating darkness.
That's what I thought, and it's the suffocating darkness, but also that Vader could come at you from any angle.
Yeah,
like you're out in the open. There isn't like, oh, I can back myself up against this wall. It's like I've got to spin around to make sure I'm covering myself 360.
Yeah. It very much reminded me of his and Luke's fight.
And
Bespin. In Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. But see, what Bespin had is it like you had these steam, like the lighting,
corridors,
and like up and down. You have no idea where this guy's coming from. Where it's like, okay, he's somewhere around those rocks or somewhere around.
It just takes him turning the
rocks.
lightsaber on to give himself away, and also Vader with all the lights and that, he can't really hide himself that well.
Well,
but
except for using the Force, apparently, just pop out of nowhere. I speaking of lightsabers, I mean, the graphics on the sabers looked amazing. Like the glow.
That's
on the
one
people,
thing I
like,
love about the newer content is they actually they give you that glow. Because if you watch like episodes 4, 5, and 6, they just didn't have the tech to do that. And it's amazing seeing that now, seeing the reflections on them, and that these things actually do emit that much light, and they're powerful in that sense. I definitely see that.
Face, and that part was so cool. But I mean, they just you talk about it, just like flicked it on. It was like it wasn't even a moment. He was like, I don't know. I just.
I think there was, and I've kind of gone back and forth on this. So, like, it kind of watching it the first time, I almost wished he did first switch it on in that kind of like awkward.
Yeah.
I don't even know if because you get this like
hesitancy,
like this close up of him, and
it's like,
it looks like it's his first time holding it again, and I almost wish he put it on there. But and he runs away and flicks it on there. But what I did like is it felt like a callback to his conversation with Leia about what the Force feels like is when you're afraid in the dark. It can be that light that you turn on that helps you feel safe and makes you feel brave. And I think that's exactly what he does in that moment, because he's definitely scared.
Right.
I mean, he's clearly running away because, above anything, Obi-Wan is trying to protect Luke and Leia and keep them from Vader, keep him from even knowing they exist.
Yeah.
But I think there's also quite a healthy amount of fear at this point.
Yes.
He knows he's washed. Like
he knows he can't stand toe to toe.
Yeah, that's what they say.
This is true. This is true.
I think for me, the moment I wish he turned it on actually, and I was surprised he didn't. It was like after he takes out those 3 stormtroopers with just a gun.
I was expecting that.
And it's like Leia goes behind him, and like here comes these 4 stormtroopers, and he just lays down. I'm like, bro, you got to at least throw out the lightsaber, at least throw out the mind tricks, like something. Like
on that note, Obi-Wan's a remarkably good shot.
Yeah.
I mean, better than he was last week. I'll say that.
Yeah.
He got that guy who was holding Leia without any question.
That was I was waiting for a trick or a.
So was I. I was like, mind trick, lightsaber. What's he gonna do? And he's just like, pew! I just got him. I have good aim.
I mean, I'm glad that he didn't break out the lightsaber in that moment, because
really?
I did want him to save that for Vader, which made sense to me. Like, okay, this is when I'm gonna go for it. But I was a little surprised that he didn't try any mind tricks in any of those situations.
That's what I was curious, because he's also Obi-Wan has never been one to like jump into the combat that way. He's usually trying to find a way to get around it as easily as possible.
Yeah, especially since at that point, I mean, when he's on the speeder and they're kind of like, "Hey, what do you mean? I thought her name was Luma. You called her Leia."
That seemed like a perfect moment for it.
That did seem like a great moment for it. I mean, they managed to get out of that, but later on when they get to the checkpoint, and at this point blasters are firing, the reinforcements come up. The jig is up.
Yeah.
There's no point in holding back at this point. They know who you are.
Right.
Like the probe droid is ID'd you. Do something.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I'm kind of like, all right. I think he's trying to like, I can strategize. I can get out of this. I again, dramatically, I'm glad that they didn't break out the lightsaber at that point. But
I mean, to your point though, like his whole thing, his purpose is to protect Leia.
Yeah. Sure.
And all that sort of thing. So the idea that he wouldn't cross that, he crossed the line to save her from falling before. Yeah. Why the lightsaber? As much as I know he hates violence, it was just like.
I mean, he hates violence, but he doesn't seem to have any problem killing people as stormtroopers at this point. Like,
and so it's like I appreciate the idea that the gotcha moment of like pew pew pew. Oh my gosh, that's the person who we're here to see. Like that, you can still have that moment, but he flicks on the lightsaber. And he's bouncing off, and he's getting ready to, like he does his move or whatever, like I'm ready for this, and then you hear him pew pew pew, and then turn around and they're all dead. Like there's a way to do it, right? I think saving the lightsaber for Vader, sure, but then they didn't make a moment out of it when he did it. You know what I mean? Like I get the
because there are classic moments, and especially one of my favorite moments is Episode 5 when Luke first enters the freezing chamber and Darth Vader's looming there, and his lightsaber turns on so slowly, and it's that eerie sound, and it's just that it's just a very intense moment. And yeah, I agree, you didn't really get that. It was just kind of lightsabers are on, and we're fighting each other.
Yeah,
now.
I mean there was that shot. I mean that people have posted a bunch of photos of where it's like that hand is in the top left-hand corner frame and the lightsaber comes out. And
right.
I mean, they did that, which was cool. My other question about this fight, did Vader add lights? Are there added lights on the suit right now? Because I only remember the ones on the chest. I saw there's
his belt was glowing a
his
bit.
belt has belt lights. Yeah.
Belt lights, yeah. I don't know if it's significant.
Well, I do know that the Vader suit has had incremental changes from show to show. And
clearly,
movie
I mean,
to
this
movie.
is a movie-accurate suit you're wearing right now.
Exactly, fully accurate. But I know they've tweaked things here and there, even to the point where like there's times where, and it looks like they've done this particular thing in more recently, is they make like the glass on his eyes red.
Yeah,
that happens in Episode 5. Actually, it was a slight thing that they added that you didn't see in like Episode 4, but Episode 5 you do see that like when he's mad. There's a red glow to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's some small changes. I wouldn't be totally shocked if like a couple more bells and whistles and lights. I
mean, he's got to wear the suit all the time. I'm sure he's like, how can we change this up a bit?
Yeah, and I'll say this: I did spend kind of the week in between, kind of trying to cram a lot of the 2017 Marvel Vader run, which covers his time between episodes 3 and 4, and kind of like, hey, what was Vader up to during this time in the Empire? And one thing he does do is tweak his suit, at least from time to time, because he is an engineer, and at one point the Emperor is essentially like, well, of course you'd want to modify your suit, like you're a tech whiz as it is, you're building droids at 9 years old. So there's and of course he gets beat up quite a bit, like he's Vader.
Yeah,
so
he got to fix himself back up.
He's taken a lot of battle damage in these comics, and so there's a lot of scenes where he's in a Bacta pod while he's just using the Force to modify and trick out his
That's
suit,
pretty cool.
which is pretty dope.
That's pretty awesome.
If you want to see like full power Vader just going absolutely nuts on stuff and doing a lot of what he did in that village scene from this episode, the 2017 Vader run should be your first stop.
Yeah, check it out. I think some people were hoping for a little bit more of the Rogue One scene from him, which I thought was kind of the best, newest version of Vader that we've seen, where he just kind of is doing. But the problem with Vader in his suit, and that people are hoping for because they were prequel fans, is like the villains were so agile and moving around a lot. Like Vader's kind of just a Hulk of a just
he's a
force power.
He's a tank.
He's a tank. I mean, he's not going to be flipping around doing all sorts of stuff like Dooku or any of those, or Maul or anything like that.
Yeah. And they touch on that a lot in this comic run too, of just like he just plods forward and takes hits because he can.
Yeah.
Because he can just take a ton of damage because he's mostly robotics at this point.
Yeah.
He can push through the pain. He doesn't need to be agile.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, especially with blaster fire, I mean, you see it in Empire Strikes Back, he can just absorb it.
Yeah.
Or deflect it, even just using the Force. Like, he's not scared of taking a couple hits. He will, just take the damage and then modify himself on the fly.
Yeah.
This dude is basically unstoppable.
Yeah. I do wish, and we'll get to this, the Obi-Wan side of this fight, I think, was like, I think a lot of people who grew up on the prequels are just hoping for Obi-Wan to flex a little bit more. Like,
I am waiting. I think it's a working out the rust again for him, because I mean this was probably the first time he's turned that lightsaber on since.
Right, but I also feel like they just injured the crap out of him, and so like I think they're gonna lean on that as like he's not able to hold the lightsaber or something like that, where it's like, how is he actually going to be able to fight?
You mean like after being burned severely and like that? That makes sense. Yeah. I hope they don't try to use it.
I know. What I wanted to see is Obi-Wan like at his tricks, like all right, we're gonna do this, and like whip off the cape and go for it with Vader, and then realize that he's still no match for him because of his sheer strength. I wanted to see some of that, but it just feels like there wasn't. That Obi-Wan never had a chance. I mean, there was just not even a.
And I personally, I actually liked that aspect of it.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't really want it, because this is, to me, if you're talking about this in the overall arc of these episodes, this to me definitely feels like the dark night of the soul of it all. Like, Obi-Wan's at his worst.
Well, he's caught off guard. He had
Right.
no idea that this was going to happen right now, and now you've got to
I
stand
guess
toe
that's
to
true.
toe.
Yeah, he has no idea what Vader is at this point.
He's shook probably even from because when he and Leia are walking through the
I mean, he's
passages,
hallucinating.
and he's picturing
Yeah.
Anakin.
Yeah.
He pictures Anakin. He doesn't
Yeah.
know what at all is going to show up.
Yeah.
So when he does and he realizes what this is, I think that does really shake him like off of his balance. And even if he was going to try to pull out some tricks at that point and try to be like, all right, like let me go back into my bag and see what I still have. Not only is he out of practice, I think he is completely shaken by
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I mean, obviously, I don't know what happens. I could be totally wrong. I'd be pretty surprised if we don't see Obi-Wan come back at some point a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit more resolute. I
hope you're right.
I
really
hope
do.
so.
I don't think this is the last we've seen of them clashing.
And I think to make that point, that moment in episode 4 where he says, "Now I'm the master," maybe we do need to see Vader get beat a little bit in this to kind of still have that presence and to kind of give Vader still that chip on his shoulder that he still has to prove himself to Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that also would be like Vader at this point. He thinks he has the high ground. Like he's been picturing this moment in his mind for the last 10 years of what I'm going to do when I finally get my hands on this dude.
Yeah.
And I do think that will get to his head because especially he's just like, this old man is fucking weak.
Yeah.
I can handle him no problem. And I think that arrogance will probably set him up for failure in successive meetings.
Yeah. I haven't seen any evidence that Obi-Wan is still strong at all. And that to me is really hard because I just love his strength and composure as a character. If we do go down that route of Obi-Wan gaining his strength again, I think it's going to be through Qui-Gon.
I think that's what he's
that's the whole the circle that's going to get him back around.
He needs that confidence again.
Because my question, that I have written down here at the end of this is like, who's going to come and save the day? Because at this point,
it's not Obi-Wan.
Like Obi-Wan's down. They've got Leia. Like it's like somebody's got to do something, and I'm a little bit worried that it's what's his name that Kumail plays.
Hajan or Haja.
Yeah, because he was in the recap, and I'm like, I thought we were done with you.
He could go. He could come back. I think personally, he might be done for the series. I don't know that we need to go back to that character.
Yeah, no, that's kind of my thinking.
But I think at this point, Obi-Wan is well due for a Rocky montage.
Yeah.
And I could absolutely see them getting him off planet, getting him to Jabim, this planet where they've been kind of smuggling these Force sensitives and other escaped Jedi to, and maybe he runs into his old friend Quinlan Vos, who we got lip service for here, and maybe he gives him that pep talk of just like, and I'm not an expert on the character. I know he was in an episode or two of Clone Wars, but Quinlan Vos is definitely a fan favorite, and I know he and Obi-Wan have kind of been...
They butt heads on ideologies and how the Jedi should act.
Spectrum.
Yeah, so let's get a little background on Quinlan. So he's in Clone Wars. Where else have we seen him, and what is his deal?
I've seen him in a variety of comics. I don't know if this probably doesn't count anymore. I don't know how much if they include the character now as canon, how much of his backstory from Legends counts. But there was a whole arc when he actually had to pretend to turn to the dark side, and he worked with Count Dooku as an agent, and then he actually ended up like almost turning and had to like find his way back. I know there's that whole backstory. There's a lot of him he's very much a loner, and he was very much like fly by the seat of my pants, I'll figure it out on the way.
Yeah
type of Jedi.
Well, and like you said when we were talking about him before the podcast, Cam, he seems to be much more of the Qui-Gon school of thought, where he's just like, I don't need to necessarily do what the council tells me to. I feel like I know best and I can figure this out. He's more of like a tracker and a bit more wild.
Yeah.
And in fact, I know Filoni at one point had intended to pair him up with Ventress towards the end of Clone Wars.
Interesting.
I could definitely see that pairing working out.
Those two sort of bounce off of each other and even have him sort of drag Ventress back more to the light. But I could absolutely see a character like that sitting Obi-Wan down and kind of giving him the pep talk he needs to be like, listen, man, you failed, but you got to let that go.
Yeah.
And obviously you still bear a lot of guilt over what happened with Anakin and what happened with Order 66, but it's in the here and now, and you've got kids to save.
Yeah.
So what are we doing?
Yeah. You should be Quinlan Vos. That was a great pep talk. I feel like I should go and
come on. Let's get it.
So I think the one other thing that I had a hard time swallowing that whole freaking lightsaber battle was the ending. it was like, okay, loved, set him on fire, torturing, putting him through the fire. Like I was really poetic. I thought that was really great. Kind of made sense with the character. Like, oh my gosh, he wants to do. It's just, and then he somehow he gets like distracted. The fire goes out, and then he falls down. And then when she, I forget her, Tala shoots the thing, and the flames go up. Suddenly, Vader can't control Obi-Wan through the fire again.
I can see that.
It was to me. It was one of those Star Wars things. I'm like, I'm just gonna have to let this go. All right, I can't logic this too hard. Otherwise, it's just not gonna make sense.
My thoughts on that are twofold, and I think that's absolutely a fine read. I definitely thought that at first, and I'm kind of like, well, if I'm Anakin Skywalker, right under sand on my list of things I hate is probably fire.
I was gonna say maybe his suit's not fireproof yet, and he's like, gotta put that on the list.
That's a good point. You're being afraid of fire. Yeah,
I can see that. I also think he's making a meal of this, and I think he's also just like, okay, you can run. I've got time, and I think that's something that they've been trying to stress from the Inquisitors and the Jedi, and the Sith's point of view is, to hunt these Jedi, what you need is patience. I think that came up even in the first couple episodes where they're just like, well, why didn't they chase after that guy? The answer is they don't have to.
Yeah. They'll find him eventually because, like I said, the whole Jedi code, they're going to do something dumb where they're going to try and save someone, and then you have them.
And all the galaxy is against them. They are offering credits. They're offering bounties on these Jedi.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time until probably somebody desperate enough turns them in or gives off a tip where I don't think that they need to hurry. Yeah. Their backs are against the wall.
But it's Obi-Wan at the same time, and it's like I just, for me as like somebody who unfortunately my mind goes right to does this make sense? It's just how my brain works, and sometimes on these sorts of things, I wish there had been some other element of like ambush or.
I thought she was going to shoot Vader at the point. Right. That would have been like, okay, now Vader's down. Like he wouldn't have been down, but he would have at least been distracted enough.
Yes, something else besides the exact same thing that he just did, and now he can't go through. And it's like, there's a droid, and it's like he's just so powerful. And I think if there had been a moment that had kind of put the frame around it like you just did, I think I would have been much more inclined in the moment. But I think your explanation makes total sense at the same time.
Hey, I am the king of just like, well, how do I make sense out of what I just saw there because I need to?
Yeah, because it needs to be okay.
It needs to be okay.
Speaking of heroes of the story, what was the droid's name you said?
Oh, Ned B.
Ned B. My new favorite character. Absolutely. The hammer. That was such a cool scene when he just sits back there. I always like the introduction of new droids that have that are just kind of there in the environment, and they have a little bit of personality, but not enough to be like.
Well, like annoying. He couldn't talk, but like you could still feel that there's something there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was waiting for Lola to get involved, and she was just there, which I thought was great. It's not like all of the Lola show all of a sudden, which I thought was also good.
I do appreciate that, and I think there was that sweet moment between Ned and Leia where he's just like, well, what if he has something to say? She's trying to communicate with him, and they're just like, oh, well, they didn't give him the ability to speak, and I'm sure we're gonna see by the end of this him either stand up to protect Leia or, sort of make his claim to like, yeah, I'm here to help. Like, I'm more than just a droid. Because
he's going to get like an IG-11 moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was such a good moment.
Heart-wrenching.
Yeah. I do feel like that Leia's character was, I think this was her best episode in my opinion.
Very much so.
She it wasn't too focused on her, but she was also clearly part of the story, and I loved her and Obi-Wan teaming up on that like transport thing. I thought it was just like Obi-Wan having respect for her and her stepping up to the plate, and it was just like it was great, well acted, well executed. The whole
and I love the little tidbits of Padme they're putting in there, being very headstrong, and it's like, if this guy's not going to handle the situation, I'll just handle it. Yeah, even as like a 10-year-old child.
Yeah.
And obviously they're definitely trying to bring comparisons to Padme, but I still think that there's a lot of comparisons you can make to young Anakin here.
Oh, yeah.
Point.
Yeah.
And this is essentially close to the relationship I think that Obi-Wan and Anakin might have had when they first started as master and apprentice, is this young child and this guy sort of unequipped to handle this, maybe reluctant to do so, but doing it because he promised somebody that he would.
Yeah.
And I think that I see a lot of parallels even between, not only her mother, but also her father, who she asked him about. And There's a really small moment too when they're talking about their families on the transport. That even when Obi-Wan talking about like sort of remembering his mother and his father, but he also mentions a baby brother that he hardly remembers. And I think that yes, while I do believe he is talking about possibly there is a real brother that he may have had at that time, I do think he is referencing Anakin a bit there of just like, I had a younger
That's
brother.
an interesting take.
I can hardly remember what those good times were like at this point.
Wow.
And I think
that's a great read, Rob.
that's hey man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm out here to do that. And so those moments really hit home for me, and I do really enjoy those moments between him and Leia.
Is there anything in canon about Obi-Wan's family? Do we know?
That when I heard the drop of a brother, I was like, wait, this feels familiar. I don't know if it's my brain just trying to rationalize it, but I feel like there is a mention of this somewhere in either a comic or book that there is somebody out there that is related to Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a very cool, unexpected moment because Jedi are always taught to relinquish their attachments, and it's just like,
well, and they're taking his kids, so they don't know. So like at this point, that's a cool another character that they could give now some time to for some other piece of content.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they need to though. I think that's the best part about it. It was just another like detail drawn into the character of Obi-Wan that I really liked. It wasn't like some big, and because it's Ewan executing that, I just think it was so well done. Like if that had just been somebody random or some other line that you're just like, it doesn't matter at all. But the fact that he hasn't talked about his family in the entirety that we've ever seen him up until right this moment, it's just kind of it's an indication of where he's at mentally too, of just like feeling kind of lost and aimless and thinking about his life and the choices that he made over the course of his, I don't know how old he is now right now, but decent size.
30s, 40s. I mean, 40s, I would think at this point.
Yeah, I think he's probably 40s. That's my guess.
But yeah, I agree with that. And what I do really like about this show, and what I also really enjoyed about Clone Wars as a show, is I did feel it really helped to flesh out Obi-Wan's character, which, don't jump on me, I always felt was a little two-dimensional before that.
Okay.
Where he was a bit Boy Scoutish. He always kind of did the right thing, and he never really other than his fight with Anakin, seemed all that conflicted in his ability to do so.
Yeah.
Whereas, especially on Clone Wars and even now, and what I especially liked about Clone Wars is you see Obi-Wan go up against a lot of the same challenges that Anakin did, whether it's trying to save somebody he loves or cares about, having the opportunity for revenge against somebody. And whereas Anakin would go one way, Obi-Wan usually went the other. And you did see that struggle a bit more. And you're seeing that here with the show that, by the time you get to episode 4 in A New Hope, he's ready to go. Like he's just waiting in the wings, waiting for his opportunity to team up with Luke and be like, all right, it's go time. We're gonna train and do this. And here I like seeing him question his ability, and this is also what I liked. I'm actually personally, I know this is a contentious movie, but I loved The Last Jedi, and especially because of what it did for Luke and this idea of, progress isn't always a straight path.
Right.
You take hits, you take steps back, you take failures, and it's about how you recover from those things. And I think that can be especially hard for people who don't fail often.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really important thing, and I think a really interesting story point to see those people struggle through those times and have them come out the other side and be more resolute and believe in themselves stronger because of it.
Yeah, for me, I totally hear you on the Boy Scout of it all and seeming kind of two-dimensional. That being said, I do feel like Obi-Wan was always very intelligent about the situation. He's very logical.
Yeah.
And but he did go at it alone, and he's trusted his gut a lot of the time. And his classic line, like, I have a bad feeling about this. He really, although being kind of cautious, he goes after Grievous by himself. He like all these other sort of things where he has a kind of like, this is where I'm going, and I'm headed that way, and I don't have any fear about it, and I'm not afraid to give my life for this cause. And right now, and I think, like you said, he's going through something. He's going through not feeling like himself, and whether or not he gets back to that state of mind, I don't know. But it feels like I said, who's going to come and save the day in the next episode? That's my prediction is Qui-Gon. I don't know if you guys have any other predictions for the next
Qui-Gon's
episode.
got to show up because he keeps calling his name. So
Yeah.
if it's not this episode, like,
What are you doing? Man?
Yeah.
Wake up from that Force sleep already. Jeez.
I think there will be a point where he and Qui-Gon connect, and that'll be sort of what helps him get back on the path.
Do you think he's talked to him previously and Qui-Gon went silent?
I do.
That's part of what I'm thinking as well. Kind of the way after, kind of the way Obi-Wan did with Luke after Luke decided to basically go face Vader by himself.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan's like, well, I can't help you. And it's kind of that silence. And when Luke calls out to Obi-Wan, he doesn't respond. I feel like it's a similar situation. Who knows as to why Qui-Gon isn't talking to him? Maybe they'll explain that.
Yeah, I mean that was always a very frustrating moment for me in the originals. Was like, why isn't Obi-Wan talking to him? And it was like he's trying to asking for help, and he's not helping him. But I think maybe this is where we learn how Obi-Wan learned to not do that. Maybe that's kind of a parallel there. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, because I do think it's important for all of those characters to face those challenges without that help, or else it would just be, a Deus Ex Machina sort of thing, where just like, okay, well, Obi-Wan came and bailed you out, or Qui-Gon came and bailed you out, or gave you that inspiration. But I think, to me personally, I actually don't think that he's talked with Qui-Gon yet.
Oh, interesting.
That's my personal read. I think, maybe we could see it go.
He's just
way.
like, Yoda's full of shit.
Yeah, right.
That little green goblin knows nothing.
And I think that could even play into his crisis of faith of just like, I should be able to make
you actually think that Obi-Wan has a crisis of faith in the Force?
I think a bit.
I don't at all.
I do.
Because I think he talks to Leia about how it's a light in the darkness and how it's so great, and I think he's just scared to use it. I think that's really what it comes down to. He's lost. They lost the war. They're down. They're like, it's just, to use a sports metaphor, it feels like they're down 3-0 in the series, right? And it's like, he still knows he's good at basketball, but he's not gonna necessarily pull out all the stops because they think they're inevitably gonna lose, and he's just kind of lost, kind of in the midst of it. But I don't think he's lost touch with or thinks less of the Force because of it.
I don't necessarily think he thinks less of it, but I do think that he does have that line when he talks with the Jedi that hey, the time of the Jedi is over. Like we're done. We
lost. Yeah.
And I do think that there's a part of him, obviously, that you kind of have to balance that against his drive to still want to train Luke, and I think that he does see that as his last hope.
Yeah.
And I think it's less. Maybe a better phrasing of it is he's lost, I think, ability, or his faith in his ability to use the Force.
Yeah.
I think he thinks / he knows he's rusty.
Yeah.
Which I think is partly why he's just like.
But he's not like motivated to get unrusty. Which
exactly.
Is, I think
right.
Kind of
because he's like, why do I need to? And if anything,
unrusty, shiny.
Right. But I do think before this is over, we'll see him get back into some sort of shape. He'll do his whole like
some push-ups,
like form 3.
He'll lift Leia up, as she said.
Yeah.
We'll see him do that whole showdown. Because certainly in Rebels, by the time we get to the episode Twin Sons, Obi-Wan's back into fighting shape.
Yeah,
hiding in the sand and all that.
Yeah. He at that point he's good to go, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, I didn't know about that. That makes sense. I think the piece of this puzzle that we still haven't talked about is Reva and like what's she gonna do with Leia. I mean,
and what's her? She definitely has an agenda that's beyond, I think, even what Vader is looking for.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of pitched my theory last time about the whole blaming Obi-Wan for things, but
I absolutely agree with that.
But I think there may be a moment where she turns to the light side. Where
I'm on the same kind of page. It's like, what? Because I mean, what's gonna happen? There has to be something with this character.
Yeah.
Either she gets redeemed or she goes completely full dark side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could absolutely see her kind of getting that pull back, because you do see that happen sometimes with the Inquisitors, because they are all ex-Jedi.
Yeah.
Well, and they don't like each other. You can definitely tell it's not like they're like the Empire where like everybody falls in line. They're kind of their own group, and they have their own
feisty.
politics.
I mean, there's a lot of infighting there.
Right. And I'll definitely say, again, from reading that, like that line of Vader comics, that's very much you get a lot of time with Vader and the Inquisitors, and he trains a lot of them, and a lot of their training is he cuts off your hand, and they're just like, whoa, that's a little brutal, and he's like, well, that's a lesson they'll remember. Like it is definitely a survival of the fittest. You have Inquisitors betraying each other.
Yeah.
It's dog eat dog to get to the top
Yeah.
in the Inquisitor program. Absolutely,
It's
no
Top
friends.
Gun on a whole
As we can
level.
see,
Yes.
the Grand Inquisitor is dead and nobody cares.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's no funeral. There's no one question. But the other thing is, no one questions that it was Obi-Wan, which I think is very interesting. And I did not expect her to blame him for that.
I
but
expected that. If
but
he's going
it made
to,
so much sense.
Yeah, that was like that's how. I mean, she has to walk away somehow. She's going to say Obi-Wan did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just like,
I want to see more of that planet too. I mean, it looked kind of cool. The Grand Inquisitor planet. What was that called?
Yeah, I don't remember
yeah.
the name of the planet, but I do know that it is in the Mustafar system.
Okay.
I do know that it's like one of the neighboring planets of Mustafar, which is also, we saw, that's where Vader's castle is.
Yeah. Interesting that it's there. I kind of love that.
Yeah, it's the...
His house. Yeah, his house is. I love how they brought that back into it.
Yeah, it looks so good. I was like, why are we going back here? Oh, he built his thing there. That's cool.
Yeah, he uses... it's definitely a dark side locus that is something that is explained again in the Marvel run, but also it's the site of his greatest defeat.
I was gonna say that too. Yeah, it's something you can tell that he's basically constantly reminding himself that he's always holding on to that grudge of what happened.
Yeah, he's just doing push-ups, looking at Obi-Wan's picture, just thinking about it.
He wakes up every morning, walks to the spot where he didn't have the high ground, and just shakes. I should have known.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah,
he rides one of those little floating lava things.
He's leveled the ground, so there is no high ground anymore.
Yeah, just completely level. I love that.
Oh my god!
But yeah,
there's a golf course there now.
He's absolutely trying to channel his pain to make himself more powerful.
Yeah. Use it, right? All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for this week. Very exciting special guest on the podcast next week.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's TikTok famous Puppet's going to be on the show. That's not even an exaggeration at all.
Yeah.
Star Wars and puppets go hand in hand, so it kind of has to happen.
How many podcasts have you listened to that have a puppet who knows more about Star Wars than you? I couldn't be more excited.
Not once. I mean, if there's ever a week to watch the YouTube version,
yeah, it's gonna be
the one.
Rob in a Vader suit this week, and it's only gonna get better from there. So
only going up.
Thank you all so much for listening. We will see you back here next week on the Bacta podcast.